Hey there you guys, welcome back. Today we are going to do a little bit of an orchid video. I haven't done an orchid video in a while. This is a Phalaenosis palens. I bought this a couple of years ago at an orchid show. It was on one of the vendors bench, members bench. Oh my god, why can't I get words out this morning? It is morning and I'm still waking up. I was down here and I was watering the plants. Actually, I was watering them yesterday, and I leave them in my my wash tub. I water them and let them drain. I water them, I let them drain, and let them sit there overnight so that they drip off and do their thing. And when I went to pick it up this morning, a little Keiki fell off, a little baby. So as you can see on this plant, there's already a baby on here. Let me see, does this camera pick it up a little better? We've got a baby on here. All kinds of little roots. I'm going to leave this one on. I think I brought over 2 pots just in case I wanted to do a repot on them both to remove the Keiki, but I don't know. Are you able to see here at the tip of this growth? It looks like it's starting. Does this camera pick it up better? It's just starting to produce. I don't know if it's starting to produce more. I don't know if it's gonna focus in. Anyway, it looks like the flower spike is starting to grow again. So I'm just going to leave that as it is and see what happens. The plant seems to be doing just fine. The roots look terrible. Let me bring it down over here. These roots have been dried up for eons. But the plant looks good. It's nice and shiny. This is actually because I sprayed it with the insecticidal soap. Just to make sure that I don't have any mealy bugs. It's been an ongoing battle. I don't see anything on here. I do check it every time I water, but it looks pretty. But the plant itself looks fine. The babies look great. There's a lot of root development, as you can see. So I just wanted to, since it fell off, I wanted to repot it. So since I got the cameras here, might as well get this done. So I hope you enjoy this little bit of a Keiki planting process. So what you want to do if you have a Keiki on your orchid, it's best to leave it on there as long as possible. It is taking energy from the parent plant. So if you notice the parent plant getting really stressed out, it might be good to remove it, but you really want to make sure that you have good root development on the Keiki first. So like a little spider plant, you really don't want to cut it off until the roots are a couple of inches long and you've got good root development. This won't have any problem living on its own. It's going to enjoy having its own pot. But if there's any sort of stress, the little baby will take energy from the parent. And if there is no stress, then you'll find that the Keikis will grow a little bit faster. So, yeah. This plant hasn't flowered for me. I'll show you a photo up in the top corner of what it should look like. This is just a Google, a picture from Google. It kind of looks to me like a Phalaenopsis hieroglyphica, but yeah, again, haven't seen this one before in bloom, so that is what I expect it to be. It might be something completely different, but that's what the tag says. So, and this palens, I believe it's a species, and it is a profuse baby maker. It loves to produce Keikis, so just keep that in mind. If you see it and you want to have some little baby plants, maybe this is one to give a try. But again, if it produces too many Keikis, it can sacrifice the parent plant because it's going to put its energy into producing babies. So it's not always a good thing, but it's fun to experiment with. It's fun to try. So anyway, let's just get right to it and pot this little guy up. So what I'm using is I'm going to use my sphagnum moss. I've pre-moistened it. I like using sphagnum moss for my orchids, like I said before, as a tell. Everybody uses something different. Some people don't like using moss because really moss, as it breaks down, it becomes more acidic, and these guys can actually kill roots. So you need to repot more frequently. So they recommend annually when you're using things like sphagnum moss. But other things with like the bark, you don't need to repot it so often. You really want to repot it as the bark breaks down. So, and then there's things that you can use like lava rock or I don't know, the leca stone, the hydroponic balls. you can use those. Those really don't need to get changed out very often. What you want to do with those items is make sure to flush them out so they don't get a really big amount of salt buildup. So if the salt builds up, it can also hurt roots. So you just want to make sure to flush out with water often. Fertilizer will stick to it, and those salts just develop. It's that white crust that you see. So anyway, just keep that in mind. There's so many options for potting. Just because I'm using one thing doesn't mean you can't use another. The process is still basically the same. And everybody's watering technique. Oh my god, this is turning into a video. The watering technique has a lot to do with it as well. Because I am a lazy waterer, I don't water every day. I don't water maybe even every week. I water when a plant needs to be watered. So I use the sphagnum moss as a tell. I go around and I touch them and see if they're crunchy. If they're crunchy, chances are they need a drink. When you're using things like the little hydroponic balls, the little terracotta balls, you can water more often. So if you're a heavy waterer, you can use something like that, and you could probably get away with watering every day, every other day, if that's what you like to do. Or even like a lavastone, you can water much more frequently. Every orchid's going to be different. Every little species is going to be different. Different fowls, amongst fowls. Some of them like to be watered more often. Some of them like to be more on the dry side. You learn with your plants. So just make sure to be aware of what's happening in your windowsill or grow space or whatever you may have. And it also changes by season. Anyway, this is turning into a confusing video. Let's just get to planting, alright? So I also have fir bark. So I like to mix my sphagnum moss with fir bark, just so that it breaks up the mix and it has a little bit more airflow, and it will dry out a little bit more quickly. If it's just sphagnum moss, the bottom will stay wet when the top is crusty. So I just want to add the extra airflow so it kind of dries a little bit more evenly. So I have the fine bark mix, the medium bark, or even the bigger bark would be fine, because the sphagnum moss is going to fill in a lot of the gaps. But this is what I have. I thought I had more, but I don't. I don't have more. I need to go out and buy some. I keep forgetting whenever I'm out. So I've got my little 4-inch pot. Here's the 4-inch pot. And I'm going to layer a little bit of sphagnum moss. Just going to fluff it up. I don't like to tightly pack my sphagnum moss. Again, airflow. And then I'm going to... Again, I've been really into this layering lately. I don't know why. I have not seen it on any videos. I don't read it in any books. It's just a personal preference I really enjoy for whatever reason. And experiment, play, have fun. You'll also see in the different layers, maybe your orchid or plant likes a specific layer more than another, so you'll notice a lot more root development in those different areas. So why not play around, experiment, have fun with it. You're certainly not going to kill it by doing layers. Well, I hope not. But that's the fun of plants. Okay, now let's go into another layer here. The top layer is all going to be sphagnum moss. Let me make a little divot in there, because I need to be able to put this plant in there and have it be fine and not be too high. So now what I'm going to do, these roots actually have not had any contact to media. They haven't been watered really great, so they're a little bit on the dry side. So I'm going to just very carefully, I'm not putting any pressure on these, I just want to envelop the roots with this moist sphagnum moss, and then I'm just going to lay it down there in the pot, try to get it center. These roots really should, it might be good to soak it a little bit before planting it, but I didn't do that. I'm a lazy guy. It'll get the moisture. So the reason why I wrapped it up first was I wanted to make sure that the roots had good contact with some moss. Alright, so this doesn't look like it's up straight at all. It looks like it's kind of lopsided, but that's okay. It'll find its own way. The next leaf that grows will be a little bit different. I just don't want to lay the leaf right on the soil surface or the media surface. And also, it's good to have Phalaenosis not be planted like this one, because if water sits in the leaf joints, it can actually cause crown rot. So you certainly don't want that. In the wild, Phalaenopsis generally grow off trees, and they grow kind of on an angle like this, so that water comes down, it waters everything, and it kind of falls out of the leaf crevices. So you don't have standing water. So that's kind of what you want to do when you're planting your Phalaenopsis. Not everybody is going to plant their Phalaenopsis this way, because it's not terribly pretty, but that's why people mount them and do what they do, and that's how they are in the wild, and that's how you can avoid crown rot. So when you're planting a Phalaenopsis, if you want to avoid crown rot, if it's planted this way, you want to make sure after you water it to get a piece of paper towel or something, or Q-tip or something, and just collect any little droplets of water that might be standing in there. I usually wait an hour or two, see what dissipates, and then I go in and do it. It's not going to be like an instant thing. If water immediately gets in there, don't worry about it, but you don't want to have any standing water. So just keep that in mind. Don't stress out too much, but don't be too lax either. So, alright, so I think that this one is planted up good enough. I enjoy the look of this moss. I might put a little bit more in here, just to top it up. And then, since this is already pre-moistened, I don't need to give it a drink. I'm just going to stick it in its spot. Phalaenopsis, like a lighter or a more indirect light. They like a bright but indirect spot. My aunt actually has it in hers in a south or west facing window. The leaves are very yellow. They're just obscene looking. But the plant blooms constantly, and it looks great, and it's got tons of roots. But the leaves just look like crap. But it does really well for her. So everybody experiment. It's fun. They typically like to have a well lit but indirect light. That's where they do the best. You want to have it close to an area that has a little bit of a temperature fluctuation in the spring and the fall. That's what actually promotes the bloom for many of these regular orchids that you find in the garden centers. They need that temperature fluctuation. So if you have an orchid and you've had it for a few years and it hasn't done anything but put on beautiful new leaves but no flower spikes, and you have it sitting in the middle of your house, maybe try moving it closer to a window or into an area like a cooler room as the temperature changes. That might trigger it into producing a bloom spike. Some of these species, though, like to be kept on the warm side, and they bloom in the summer. So just keep in mind what you're shopping for when you're buying an orchid or buying a Phalaenopsis. But the typical ones that you find, say in Walmart, they like that temperature trigger. So anyway, this has really turned into a long-winded video. I apologize. We've repotted our little Phalaenopsis palens, and it's looking really adorable, and the leaves are pretty and glossy. And yeah, show me what you're growing. Maybe you have some keikis on your orchid. I would love to see how many keikis maybe you have had grow on your plant. Maybe you've taken some photos, post them to the Plants and Things What's Growing page. It's fascinating. These are really, really cool. I can never get enough of these. Again, this one just fell off on its own, so I think it was time. This one will do in time. The roots are still a little bit small, but they're on their way. But anyway, until next time, you guys, happy growing.